show, Vaughn.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
The team photographer for the Toronto Raptors, the only Canadian team in the NBA. People are going to say I'm biased. But in all honesty, we're happy to have you here. I don't think we've had many sports photographers on the show other than Danny Wild and your, I don't know, friend. You know him, Dave Sanford, who's a good friend of ours.
Yeah,
and,
he's definitely a friend of mine. Good guy.
Awesome. Yeah, we love Dave. And,
great photographer.
Yeah. Very good, very skilled. And I think a great place to start, since I've already let the cat out of the bag, is we want to know, I guess, your story from your beginnings. Vaughn's first time picking up a camera to team photographer of the Toronto Raptors. I know that could be a very long story, but I think it's a good idea. Maybe we get from point A to B, and then we'll get some more into our nuanced questions, if that works with you. How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool.
I'm originally from Canada. I was born here in Ontario. After high school, I moved over to the UK. My parents are English, so I had a British passport. I wasn't shooting professionally then. I was a chef. I basically traveled around the world working in bars and restaurants. I couldn't see myself doing that for the rest of my life, so I always had an interest in photography.
Okay.
And it was my girlfriend at the time. We hadn't quite got married yet. We were living in Australia for a little while, and we moved back to the UK. And I ended up taking a 2-year photo course at Leeds College of Art and Design.
Okay.
There was a small sports agency in town, and I kind of knew those guys because I was interested in sports and photography. So I had 1 month left to graduate from this photo course, and I was offered a full-time job by this agency. Mm-hmm. And it took me about 5 minutes or probably 5 seconds to figure out what my answer was going to be. I didn't finish the course, but I started a full-time sports photo job. Wow. I always tell people that it's kind of lucky in the right place at the right time. My boss there, the owner, his name is Simon. He great guy. Really helped me along. I worked for him for I can't remember how many years. I've been shooting sport for about 25 years.
Okay.
Then when I started, we did like English sports like soccer, rugby, cricket, that kind of thing.
Cricket, you're there for 5 days, camped out.
Yeah. There are 5-day matches, and it can be quite tedious sometimes. Sometimes there's like 0 fans there, and you're the only one in the stands. But it can be fun. It's an interesting sport, to say the least. But then 2013, my wife and I decided to move to Canada. My wife's Irish, and we decided to move to Canada. So I started the freelance thing. It took me a couple of years to get in the swing of things and try to get regular work here. I knew a lot of people in the industry, and a lot of the guys in the UK helped me out over here, and I ended up working for Getty Images here in Toronto. Mm-hmm. And then I was shooting basketball. I was shooting the Raptors on a regular basis for them, and then COVID hit, and the team photographer basically he'd been shooting the Raptors since the very beginning, and he was near retirement time. So he decided to retire during COVID, and they basically asked me if I wanted the job. So I took it. And
did that decision take 5 seconds as well?
It took a little bit longer. Just just thinking about like other work that I might not be able to do because I'm doing that job and that sort of stuff. So, but I took the job, and that was 4 years ago now. This is my fourth season shooting for I basically am I tell people I'm the NBA team photographer. I basically team photography is all run through the NBA now, and so I work for the NBA, and I also work for the Raptors too. So. But yeah, the 4 years since I've been doing this job for the NBA and the Raptors has been pretty fun, pretty enjoyable.
Yeah, no doubt. Wow, I have so many questions just that build off of your story. First of all, some people listening may be like, is this man crazy? He didn't say yes to an NBA Toronto Raptors job. Why were you thinking maybe no? I mean, I respect the poise to sit back, get a lay of the land, and assess why this may or may not be the best decision, even when it's clearly a very exciting opportunity.
Probably like just like I was kind of, I wouldn't say I had full-time work with Getty here, but I was working a lot for them. I was basically shooting pretty much most sports here, and it was just one of those things where I was in order to shoot for the NBA and the Raptors, I ended up having to say no to Getty, that I couldn't shoot the Raptors for them. So it was more along the lines of trying to figure out how all those relationships were still going to work,
right?
With current employers and future employers like the NBA and the Raptors. So.
Right, and I guess you're trying to structure it in a way where it's the smartest financially for you.
I don't like to say things are about money, but definitely that does come into it as well. It can be something that you definitely think about in those situations.
Yeah, no doubt. You have to. Another question, you mentioned you came over from across the pond to Canada. You returned, and you said you're going freelance. I'm curious what that process looks like, and a lot of people will be interested, I think, to hear this. As a freelance, how to just start? Is it a lot of leaning? You mentioned you had connections. How do you effectively lean on those connections to build some opportunities when you're essentially starting from scratch?
Yeah, it's not easy. I can tell you that.
Yeah, no doubt.
There are a lot of freelance photographers in this industry, and we've probably all gone through the same sort of situation. Some people start out as like graduate from college and end up and decide to be a freelance photographer, but I kind of went the other way. I had a full-time job. Things were like I enjoyed the job and who I was working for and the business over there, but we ended up moving back here just because my family was here, my wife's was in Ireland, and we were living in England. We had 2 young kids, and we were kind of like we're living in a different country, and we don't have our family support around us. It was either Ireland or Canada. We decided to come to Canada. Fortunately, when I did come here, a lot of guys that I knew in the UK put in a good word for me, spoke to their bosses and said, "Hey, there's this guy. He's been shooting over here for a long time. He's just moved over to back to Canada and Toronto. If you guys are looking for anything in that area, he's your guy." So I do owe a lot to guys that I used to work with in the UK. For like putting in a good word for me over here, and it wasn't immediate. It took like the first year I pretty much did no work, and we were like second guessing the decision and all that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden, it just like the phone just started ringing, and it was like people knew I was here, and yeah. So I that was basically like Getty was basically the main people who called and
right.
And said, can you shoot sport in Toronto for us. They were looking into moving into smaller markets back then. It was kind of around, I think it was 2014, and it was 2 years before the Rio Olympics, and they were kind of looking into moving into smaller markets like Brazil, and I think Mexico with the same, they said, and Canada. It kind of went from there. So,
well, that story speaks testaments to making sure that you leave good impressions and you build relationships wherever you go and regardless of what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, I like it. Like, it's a small community in the UK, and but there are a lot of photographers. There's a lot of sport, but everybody knows each other there. Everyone knows each other, and you see each other on like a weekly basis at sporting events, similar to the way it is here. But yeah, those guys over there that I was friends with really helped me out, and I definitely note those guys as helping me be where I am in my career right now.
Right.
I'm curious about the week to week, like a little bit of the semantics of your job with the Raptors and the NBA. Like, what are the responsibilities throughout the week? During the season, off season, each game, home games, away games? Are you flying with the team?
No.
What's a general week kind of look like?
So basically, it's a home thing contract. Mm-hmm. So I shoot every home game. Mm-hmm. So that there's a guy that does what I do in, say, New York or Phoenix or LA
for the NBA. Gotcha.
Yeah. So if the Raptors go play in Phoenix, then they've got the Phoenix NBA photographer there that shoots both teams, and then the Raptors would have access to those images through this NBA deal. Sorry, I forget what the part. Oh yeah, like the day week kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's basically it's basically a game day thing, right? Like tomorrow the Raptors are playing Chicago, so I basically my day is it's basically a 12-hour day. I'll get there around. I'll drive to the arena. I have 8 cameras, so I have three cameras that I have with me that are in my handheld cameras where I sit on the court. But then I have 5 other cameras that are all remotes that I set up around the arena that take remote pictures. Like I have a button on my handheld when the action is down the other end, I hit that button and all those 5 cameras go off, and you just kind of keep your fingers crossed that they make a picture.
That's cool.
But yeah, it's basically just game day stuff. I also do like media day and the team picture at the end of the year, and if there's any big trades or anything like that, the NBA usually want headshots, like new fresh headshots of these guys. But yeah, it's just generally like live match action most of the time.
Now, I watched a game or two, and on the baseline, there's a number of photographers. Do you kind of get dibs of the best spot if there is one, or is that a first come first serve, or is it very assigned? And what other agencies are there? Newspapers, local?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say I get the best spot, but because I'm shooting for the NBA, there's generally a spot on the floor that most of the team photographers sit in. I sit like on the inside, like close to the basketball stanchion. Generally, that's like a cleaner area where there isn't like referees standing in front or anything like that. But here in Toronto, there's Canadian Press, Toronto Star, Getty Images, USA Today, myself. I think that's it. And then there's other spots for like social. So like the Raptors have a social team, so they'll have a spot on the floor. And then there's usually an away video, away social photographer or video, they'll generally have a spot on the floor as well. And then the other spots are taken up by TV and like floor cleaners and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've always watched and just imagined sitting crisscross applesauce for that long, and or on the hard floor is it's got to be difficult, and you got to get a little squirmy down there, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's not easy, I'll tell you. It's not comfortable, but
it doesn't look it.
Yeah, it's the first few games of the season. It takes a little while to get used to, but yeah, during the breaks and play, like we stretch our legs out and stuff like that because we're in a little box. We have to stay in the box. So, but yeah, during breaks and play, and we could stretch our legs out and stuff. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Serious question: have you been landed on?
Not like fully landed on. But I've had my like foot stepped on before. Players have landed in my area, and you kind of like the play carries on. You kind of look around and you're kind of like, geez, I'm glad that wasn't like LeBron James or like a real big guy, you know?
Yeah.
Because it could hurt, but yeah, it even hurts when you get your foot stepped on. You know, it's but part of the game, right?
Yeah,
no doubt. So you have 8 cameras. There's a lot going on. Basketball is a quick game. It's fast paced. It's fluid. How do you cue in on what's essential and what isn't necessary, even though it may be awesome? In other words, how are you prioritizing that deserves a shutter click, that doesn't?
It's basically the way sports photography works. When the play's coming towards you, you're basically focused on the guy with the ball all the time. It's not really a picture if the guy doesn't have the ball, right? Or if he's not shooting the ball. Generally, yeah, we're focused on the guy with the ball. It's tough to. There's a lot going on. There's referees in the way. There's other players in the way, and you don't always get a picture of the guy, a great picture of the guy shooting the ball, but yeah, it can be hit and miss like a lot of sports. And then down the other end is where I have all my remote cameras. So and they're all generally angled towards the basket. So so when the play is in that area, like in the key, is when I would hit the button. And again, it's hit and miss. It's like any remote camera. You keep your fingers crossed that you got a nice picture. You know, from my end, something might happen, and I'll be like, oh, that might be nice on that remote camera or that one. But you'll never know until you have a look at the pictures after the game. You know.
Now, is there one remote for all 5 cameras over there?
No.
Or does each one have a different thing?
Basic. I don't want to get too technical, but we use Pocket Wizards to fire these cameras, and my number is 27, so I have a Pocket Wizard on top of my handheld camera. So when I hit the button on my camera, it basically all the other 5 cameras have the same number, 27. So they basically all fire at the same time when I hit that button.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, right. It's to be honest, it's a very technical sort of. It's kind of hard to understand if you don't actually see it in front of you. I'm the kind of guy that's like. I know guys do this, and like before I started doing it, I knew guys in other arenas and stuff like that would have all these remote cameras everywhere, but until you're actually doing it yourself, you don't really understand how it all works. So it's kind of hard, but yeah, it even took me like a couple of months to remember everything and where all my cables go and where everything plugs in and where all my remotes go and all this sort of stuff. So.
What if I asked you the same question about picking out what's essential for non-action moments? You know, team huddles, things where there's maybe more of an opportunity to tell an artistic still story that's not full of action where someone has the ball.
Generally when the game's on, it's like it's basically full on action. There are breaks in play when there's timeouts and like injuries and stuff like that. Um, I wouldn't necessarily, like, I don't usually get up during the game and go over to the bench and photograph like a huddle or anything like that.
Okay.
A lot of that sort of stuff that we look for is kind of pregame. I have access to the tunnel and where the players run out, where they all gather. They come out of the dressing room like 15 minutes before the game starts, and they all do a huddle and a prayer and stuff like that. And I have access to that. And the light's really different down there. It's dark and there's a few spotlights and things like that. So that the way I get sort of creative is basically that pregame stuff where I can use like a prime lens and shallow depth of field and yeah, that's where you make this sort of nice pictures that most people don't see because they're obviously not allowed down there. So it's kind of nice to try and get creative in those sort of instances.
Yeah, that's nice. That is nice that you can fill two buckets. It kind of builds on a question I had, which was about how you approach, obviously, photography. We all hear this phrase a lot. It's about telling a story, right? And my question was, how are you telling the story of a game that moves so fast? Or when it's action-packed, is it mostly just about freezing time?
Yeah, it is basically covering the game from where you're sitting. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right. So is there much room to quote tell a story, that buzz phrase we always hear, or is it just more of a journalistic, I'm documenting what's happening? Right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Kind of different ways of looking at it.
Yeah, it is basically just documenting what's happening in front of you. But as a player might be playing really well throughout the game, and they could be getting close to setting a point record for a game for the Raptors. So knowing that sort of stuff, the comms team at the Raptors are really good. They always send out text messages and things like that, or post stuff on their Twitter. Post stuff on their Twitter about so and so just set a team record or something like that. So we kind of know if there's a story developing where a player is doing something special. We can sort of concentrate on him, or like make sure we get pictures of him shooting the ball, dribbling the ball, general things like that. You know.
Right. No, that makes total sense. On that note, you mentioned points records. What's been your most memorable time photographing with the Raptors, either on court or off?
Probably I was in when they won the championship.
Right on.
I wasn't shooting for the NBA at that point, but I was there shooting for Getty, and that whole season and that whole yeah, it was pretty crazy. It was good. That playoff run was crazy. I still always feel a little disappointed that they didn't win it in Toronto. It still kind of feels like for me, because I didn't see it happen.
It's against Cleveland,
right? Golden State. Yeah. So it I still kind of feel disappointed that I didn't get to see them win it at home, but still, the fact that they won was pretty special, you know.
Yeah, that is awesome. Aaron, you want to hop in?
Yeah, you might have answered this, but I'm just thinking of big arenas and even like concert photography. There's taking photos of the musicians or the athletes or what have you, but there's also the entire environment and what's special about, you know, the arena. So how often are you running around and getting like a giant widescreen of the crowd and the court and trying to get some of those assets as well? Or is that not the priority, or is that for someone else? Just curious about like all the other stuff beyond the action to create as Seth was saying, I guess, like the narrative of the season or the narrative of the place or the feel of the environment?
Generally, it's you're concentrating on the game. There are instances that I would go up high and take a general view of the arena. Every season we have different floors and different jerseys. We have our three main jerseys: is black, red, and white. And then this year we have two other ones: another black one and a purple one. And there's generally like a matching floor with those jerseys. So when we have a new floor, I'll generally go up at some point when the arena is full, and take pictures of the floor. Just anything different that's not normal. Will the NBA and the Raptors want stuff like that, that the team hasn't used before or done before. That's when I would sort of move around a little bit, but generally I'd say 99% of the time I'm in my spot on the floor, because the main gist of it is getting that action. Like admittedly I don't get everything, but if somebody makes a great dunk or something like that and you got a picture of it, it's like people are happy, right? So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. What is your go-to lens? Like, what's I would imagine like a 24-70 is a or are you more wide than that?
Yeah, the great thing about basketball is we're like, you couldn't be closer for a big major world sport, and it's generally wider angle lenses, like for the stuff down my end close up. I use a cheaper lens as a 24 to 240. But I shoot on strobes there, so there's arena strobes in the roof of the arena. So I'm basically shooting like one shot every time. So I'm not blasting away. So this lens lets me cover the full length of the court with one lens. So I'm not switching bodies or lenses during the game, and it's good on strobes. It's a good strobe lens.
So you're connected to strobes as well.
Yeah, So when I said before, like there's a lot of like technicalities in it, and to see how all this, it's better to see how all this stuff works than somebody telling you. But yeah, that whole strobe thing is a whole nother level of what we do, shooting the basketball there. You know.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's pretty crazy.
You obviously then have to credit a lot of your success on game day to good planning and double checking.
Yeah, like I'm not. I wouldn't say personally, I'm not like a 24/7 photo guy. I'm not like constantly thinking about my job or what's next or that sort of stuff. But with regards to what I do on a daily basis, there's a lot of planning and a lot of thinking that goes into it. I kind of have it down pat now. Another photographer, the Leafs photographer, Mark Blinch, he's been shooting in the arena for a few years, more than me, and he shoots on strobes too. So I learned a lot from him about shooting on strobes and planning the day and that sort of stuff. And but now, since I've been doing it for about 4 years, it's quite easy. Like every year we try and make things as easy for us as possible. It's like it can be quite stressful sometimes. Like the first few years, it was quite stressful trying to remember everything that I wanted to do. But yeah, we've like trying to make this job as easy as possible is definitely one thing that we try and do there at the Scotiabank Arena.
Trying to make it as easy as possible is hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
This may be a strange question. How do you know you're doing a good job? Is it feedback from the NBA? Is it seeing your photos used?
That's an interesting question. I think in this industry, I think we all would agree that no news is good news.
Okay.
If you screw up, somebody's probably going to let you know.
Okay.
But if you're doing the job right, yeah, I wouldn't say people aren't interested in giving you praise, but yeah, it's as long as you're doing the right thing, then people just let you get on with your job, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Aaron and I talk about this a lot. It's interesting that often, maybe this is more prevalent in different genres, but there's almost this eagerness to be praised for a job well done. Look at how awesome these are. How come no one's saying that? And often you only hear when there's an issue. Yeah. Does that bother you?
I'd be lying if I said it didn't bother me, but I think I've been doing this for enough to know that that's the way the industry works.
Right. You know, it's like getting to a place where we got to get to a place where silence is validation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think for a lot of people, unless you don't realize that, then your career is kind of going to be tough for a little while, you know?
Yeah.
It's, yeah, it's the way it is really. Like, as long as if you're doing well, then yeah, no one generally says anything, but yeah, it is kind of annoying, but that's the way it is, right? That's the way this industry works. So
yeah, I'm gonna offer that piece of advice out to listeners. If nobody says anything,
you're doing a good job.
Hell yeah, they love it.
Yeah. If they hire you again, even better.
Yeah. That too.
You paying your paycheck, even better.
Yeah, that too.
And here's another question. You're in this, you do home games, so you're in the same court, the same team all year. Mm-hmm. How do you keep the game, photographing the game, fun and interesting and novel? I think a lot of people who listen to the show across all genres tend to deal with this sometimes, where you feel like you get to a point where there's not many more ways that you feel you can be original. The court's the same size, the rim is still at the same height, you're still in the same spot. How are you dealing with this to fill that creative bucket? Or is it not about that? Is it about just doing a job, a duty well done?
No, this is definitely a creative sport to shoot, and the fact that we have access to setting up remotes, to shooting on strobes, adds a whole nother element to just showing up with your 70-200 and shooting a sport. That's how we get creative, like using different strobes on different remote cameras and lighting the event differently. It's it basically, yeah, in that arena, like even the start of the game, they turn the lights down and there's spotlights on the players and they announce all the players and they like the starting lineup, and just playing around with all that different light that's going on, and that's how we get creative, you know, like you get to a point where it's like kind of same old, but then you're kind of like, oh well, maybe I could light this remote with this strobe from over here in this corner and see what that kind of looks like. It might cast a long shadow or something like that, you know. And but yeah,
we're okay with taking that chance, right?
Yeah, because I'm shooting 41 home games a season. It's like you get to the point throughout the season where you think about different pictures and you think about, oh, I wonder what this will look like, and we have the opportunity to try it, right? Like yeah, it is quite a creative sport, you know.
Yeah, no doubt. Is there anything, I don't know how close you actually get to be to the professional athletes. If so, is there anything you've kind of picked up on being around them, attitude wise, principles wise, that you're allowed to say?
I find personally that when I'm there, and like when everybody's there on a game day, everybody's there doing their job, right? Whether it be a coach or somebody in the media or us photographers or players, everybody's there doing the thing that they're supposed to be doing on that day. We all generally talk. Like if I was to pass a player in the hallway, I like we would probably say hello. I have sort of better relationships with some other players than other ones. Like with regards to like the social guys and media, they travel to away games, so they would have even better relationships with players and coaches. I generally see all these guys like on media day, away from the court is media day, and that's generally it. So the first sort of time we get together at the beginning of the season, I have like a few studio setups where they all come in, and we do all these different pictures and their official headshot and stuff like that, and we talk, and it's more friendly then. But on game day, I just find it's the players are there to do their job, the coaches are doing their job, I'm doing my job, and everybody does their thing, and everybody is generally successful at that, you know?
Not sure if that answers the question in an indirect way, right? It's you guys are all part of a team, and it's the sum of the parts focused on what needs to be achieved, right? Free of distraction. Is there any pieces of advice you have? I mean, you've been doing this, you said, since COVID. I'm sure you've gotten into a flow and you feel, a certain level of calm in knowing that you have the ability to do what's required of you. I wonder if it was that case when it was your first day on the job. I'm sure that was probably likely stressful.
Yeah.
The rest of my question is, how do you keep relaxed and calm when there's a lot of pressure on you to deliver and execute?
Yeah, definitely. When I 4 years ago, when I just after COVID, and I started this job, it was stressful. I made it doubly stressful for myself, because at that point I switched to mirrorless. So I was basically learning a new camera system, and also learning how to shoot on strobes, and learning how to shoot basketball from a different position on the floor, a different role there. So there was a lot of pressure on myself for the first, I'd say 2 or 3 months, just trying to put all the pieces together. But it's much easier now, because I basically know what I'm doing now. I'm much more comfortable with my cameras. Obviously, I've been shooting with them for like I've been shooting with mirrorless for 4 years, and I would never go back. I would never switch to digital SLRs. It's just experience, I guess. Like I've been there. I've been in this role for 4 years, and as every basketball season goes on, it's much more comfortable. Like I remember being stressed when it started, just trying to get all this stuff in my head, how it all works together, and but now it's quite comfortable. I get to work and I know exactly where everything is. Like I said previously, we try and make doing this job as easy for ourselves as possible,
right?
And every season there's little things that we figure out that this might work in this instance, or if I try this or use that kind of thing, it's easier, so it's better as the season goes on, because it's just it just all makes more sense,
No doubt.
When you have a creative idea, is it on you to try it out, or is there someone that you run it by and maybe set up strobes in a different way, or purchase some sort of piece of equipment that you want to try for a different look. Like, how does that process work if you want to get out of the comfort, like you said, and move into like, I want to challenge this a little bit further?
Basically, again, this is a great thing about the job is we basically generally have free reign to do what we want to do there. The all the arena strobes in the roof are all positioned in a specific spot, but there's a lot of them, and we it's basically no one's really saying, hey, why don't you do this or try that, and I don't have to tell anyone, hey, I'm going to try this or do that. It's just getting an idea in your head and executing it. Really, it's and sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does work. But it is one of the nice things about the job where you don't really have to run anything by anyone, or ask what somebody thinks. You just kind of do it, and if it works, great.
Mm-hmm. You've been doing this a long time. Similar, day after day, a basketball game. What do you like to shoot if you had free time to go use your camera, or do you just put it down and do something else? Is there a passion project you're working on that takes you away from sports?
Not really. Like when I'm not working, I do run, or I do try to run. I used to run a lot more than before COVID, and during COVID, like I wasn't working for like a year and a half, so all my runner friends and I, we were basically pro runners. It's all we did, and raced like in Ontario. And
we ran a race that I want to run this year.
Which one?
The Bad Thing.
Oh, The Bad Thing. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, if you can get into that, that sells out immediately as soon as it goes on sale, the 50K. But yeah, that's fun. That's fun up there.
Well, I'll pick your brain about it offline. I'm sorry I distracted you, but you said that, and I saw on your profile that you had run it, and it would be my first ultra, which I'm so nervous about. But I saw that you ran it, so.
Yeah, it's a fun run. The guys who organize that are really good. It's a fun weekend up. I think it's up near Goderich. I think.
Yeah, it's Goderich and Auburn. All our American listeners are like, "What? What?"
Yawning.
Sorry, Aaron. What? I forget what your question was.
I was just curious. As an analogy, I'm photographing a financial firm right now.
Oh yeah.
It's great. It's fun. It's interesting. It's different. But if I had my free time, I wouldn't be like, I'm going to go photograph a financial firm, wildlife, nature, maybe a project, what have you. But I was curious if there's other avenues of photography that you're into.
Yeah, personally, I don't like it. It's my day job, and I don't take my camera with me when I go to like a friend's barbecue, or if we go on holiday. Like my iPhone is my camera pretty much when I'm not working. I don't really I don't really have the desire to shoot all the time. I like to put my camera down sometimes. Do you
think that serves you well?
What's that?
Breaks, do you think that serves you well, taking a break and stepping away from it and not having that desire to constantly be using it? Do you think that helps you at your job?
I think so. Yeah, I've never really thought about it, to be honest. I would agree. Like I just like I enjoy my job. Like I basically do my hobby for a living, which is quite nice. But I don't like to do it all the time. I don't like to shoot all the time. So it's nice to just put my camera down and do other things.
Are you in charge of all the editing as well, or do you hand over your lot from the night?
It depends on who I'm working for and what I'm shooting. Like with regards to the Raptors and the NBA, I have an editor. So basically, all of our images go to their offices in New Jersey, and they're edited by people there in real time.
Yeah, wow. I was going to say it's probably done very fast.
Yeah, because that's kind of part of the deal. Teams want pitchers immediately, right? So that's why that system's in place. But if I'm shooting baseball in the summertime, it's up to me. I'm doing my own edit. I'm basically picking 20 images to that sort of represent what the story was in the baseball game, and then I do it like a second edit afterwards, like the next day of another few hundred images.
Wow.
We just had CEO of Topaz on. We talked a lot about AI, and this is a question I want to start getting in the habit of asking photographers as they come on the show, just to make it more relatable to listeners. You can feel free to say no. Is there any way that you're integrating AI in your daily life, photography or not?
I wouldn't say so. Definitely not with regards to photography. Like my iPhone, they just did that AI update, and pretty much all I've done is just play around with like silly stuff on that. But I wouldn't say anything to do with my job. I'm not using AI. It's kind of at that sort of mentality at the moment where it's, I wouldn't say it's not really allowed, but it's generally not allowed within our industry.
Yeah.
Although everybody's sort of getting their hands into AI and what it can do for their business.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, right now, like I said, I don't use any sort of AI at all.
No, that answer is equally as valuable to listeners. Yeah. I feel like as if you had said yes. It's just something I want to start probing people with as they come on the show. And I realize I mentioned that we did that episode with the Topaz Lab CEO, but that's after you. Just we recorded it before you, but it's airing after you. So listening, be on the lookout for that. Is there any mistakes you've made that you can remember that have served you well moving forward with a valuable lesson or lessons?
Mistakes,
photography wise or not, just something where at the time you thought, really wish that didn't happen. And then 5 years later, you're like, you know what? The lesson from that was very helpful.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I can definitely say that there has been instances in my life where yeah, there's been mistakes made and lessons learned for sure. Like, yeah, you kind of put me on the spot. What's that?
Any on the trail, on the ultra circuit?
Yeah, probably. Like,
well, I mean, ultra
fueling the wrong way, or I've run races where I felt like $1 million at the start, and then I'm like, I'm not one of those guys that like pukes during a race, but I did once, and I'll never forget it. Like I couldn't quite understand what was wrong with me, but
wow.
Yeah, it was kind of bizarre, but those things are like within the like running world, it's generally put down to not fueling properly or just not preparing yourself for the race, really. That's kind of what I put it down to. I just think that I probably, like, I can't quite remember how fit I was then, but maybe I wasn't fit enough. And I remember there were my buddy was in the lead, and I knew I wasn't going to catch him, but there were a couple people behind me that were just like breathing down my neck, and I was probably running too hard throughout the middle of that race to keep those guys away. And and then I ended up just crashing at the end, and those guys blew by me.
Right. Didn't end up running your own race, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
That's applicable across all areas of life, for sure.
Yeah, I'm always one of those guys that's like, like I don't take notice of anybody. I try and run my own race, but yeah, those guys, I remember those guys were pushing me, and I was just trying to keep them behind me, and it just didn't work that day.
Yeah. People make you not run your own race, you'll puke. I guess that's the lesson.
Pretty much. Yeah.
This podcast isn't about running, but we take an interest in the photographer's hobbies. Why did you get into ultra distance running? Is very intense. It's anything over a marathon. That's far. And personally, I've been trying to dig deeper into everything I've been doing with intent and asking myself, okay, like, why am I doing this? What's the reason? What am I trying to get out of this? And then continuing to ask why until I get to the root cause. My long-winded question is, what's your intent behind something like that?
I don't know. I think I'd like running stuff like that or doing those sort of things is I don't know. It's not like crazy in my head. It just feels good when you're done, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
If your hand feels so good when you stop hitting it with a hammer.
Yeah. I don't want to I haven't got anything profound to say, unfortunately.
You don't need to have anything profound. No.
But for me it's just like for running, for me, it was like a social sort of aspect. I loved meeting up with my running friends and my running group and running and just talking while we're running, and
it's a great why.
And just working hard together and if there's a big hill coming up and we all tackle it and everyone's doing it together, and I would say the social aspect and the fact that it's like when you've completed something big like that, it feels good. You know what I mean? It's hard when you're doing it and you when you want to give up so many times, but when you're done, it's quite a good feeling.
Yeah. I like your answer, the social aspect, and I'm trying to get better at. And I invite people listening to do the same thing, is kind of audit your intent with every daily action you're doing. And I'm trying to personally eliminate doing things without a deliberate reason behind them. Does that make sense? I'm trying to get rid of just doing things and not understanding or identifying the reason why I'm doing this, even if it's something minor.
Yeah, I completely agree. I with regards to running, I don't do it because I need to impress anybody or anything. It's just at the end of the day, it's probably a health thing too. Like I know that running and eating well and that sort of stuff is good for me. So it's it's more of that for me. Like
Yeah. Aaron, do you ever think about this? Cutting out things that don't have intent, or deciding to build intent behind them before getting in motion?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it a little while back, but it's easy for our brains, I feel like, to just get out of control with thinking sometimes. Too much of why is this happening? What should I be doing? Why am I doing this instead of doing that? Like sometimes I think it's okay to just be a bit. But to answer your question, I mean all the time. I'm constantly we're spending tons of time with the podcast. We're spending tons of time editing photos. We're traveling, exercising, trying to eat well. Research things about what foods are best or what foods are not the best, or you can constantly just, I think, be trying to figure out exactly what you are doing and what you should be doing or shouldn't be doing. Sometimes I think it can be a little tiring. I have the conversation all the time. If I sit down, I'm not a big TV guy, but I got into a series recently and I got hooked on it. And like, I want to watch this story. And every time I go to press play, I'm like, I should be doing something else. And it kind of ruins the whole thing. And like,
I guess I'm not really suggesting that the thought process be, should I or should I not be doing this? Or should I or should I not be doing something else? But rather, what is the purpose of what I am active in right now?
Yeah.
That's more the question. And I was curious if you had thought, if that thought ever routinely pops into your head, or if I'm a psychopath and need help.
No, I think it does. I think am I enjoying this? right?
Yeah,
Like
that's a good question
the
too.
big
Am I
one.
enjoying this?
That's the big one, I think, for me. Like, is this still fun? Is it not even fun necessarily, but like, is there purpose behind it that makes me feel good? Like running in the moment for me is not fun at all. But trying to keep a certain level of like cardio and exercise and just fitness, and the idea if there's a zombie apocalypse, I could run 2 miles straight. Like, I want to know that I want to have that checklist like off. So
zombies are capped at 1 mile.
I feel like they're slow, and I like 2 miles I can get to where I got to get. But yeah, so sometimes there's just those things of like, this isn't necessarily fun, or I'm not necessarily happy doing it, but the overall, if I zoom out, it feels good, and I feel good about the experience.
Right, it's a net positive.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Like at the end, it's like it feels good to know that you accomplished that, or you've put a few things down, and kind of like going back to photography, like get an idea in your head of a picture and do this, and this, and sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does, and when it does, it feels great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of like crossing the finish line. You can
still do it. Seth, we travel together, at least once a year, and there's usually a big hike involved in that travel. That's somewhat strenuous, nothing crazy, but a big hike. You're carrying a lot of gear, and you get a photo, and part of that is like, oh, I'm still able to do this. Like, I want to be able to do this for a long time.
I get to do this.
I get to do this, and I'm able to, and staying in shape and like allowing yourself to do those things and having those check marks. I used to play basketball. I'm 6'5". I used to be able to dunk. I can't anymore. I'm 44. But there was
dunk? You need to get that on the socials page.
Yeah, but the only thing, I'm just so sad at what the situation of video and photography was when I was in high school. It was like VHS video and garbage. I do have one video of me dunking in a game, which I'll dig up.
Oh, get it.
But the point being, like, year after year, I would test it, right? Until about like 26, 27, like it started to fade away. And that's aging a bit. And it's like, those are those little sad moments where you're like, I used to be able to do that, and it's now not quite there. So keeping as many of those at bay as possible. I don't want to get to a point where like I used to be able to run 2 miles, but now I cannot. So right. I think that's part of that equation for me. But just keep going, and whether it feels great or not, like, is there a bigger purpose to it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Vaughn, what's one piece of advice you'd give your former photographer self when you were just starting out? If you could speak to him right now.
I would say everything work. It kind of sounds silly. Everything works out in the end, but there's a lot of things that happen. Probably just in life, I guess. Really, for example, my wife and I weren't sure if moving back to Canada was the right thing, but we did it anyway, and we kept our fingers crossed that it was going to work. And the first couple years for me, it was a struggle, and but I'm a firm believer of things all tend to work out in the end. You might not at the moment you might not understand or agree with a decision or the way things are happening or working at that point, but I'm a firm believer in generally things work out in the end for you. So there can be a big struggle in this industry for people trying to get work, trying to get the right clients, that kind of thing. But I tend to think, if somebody says no, then, down the line, someone's probably going to say yes. You know what I mean? You just got to keep on battling, keep on going hard at it. And sooner rather than later, things do tend to work out in the end. I feel,
Vaughn Ridley, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your time today, man.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.